So I think you've already said this, but where were you before you found out, and before you found out the first plane had crashed into the building?
I was at my house. I was getting ready
Yeah.
for work.
It was just like
My,
any
my,
normal
my,
day.
what's that?
It was just like a normal day in the morning, getting ready.
Normal day in the morning.
Yeah.
I remember because I was half dressed when my partner called me.
Mm-hmm.
Normally I get to work at 9:30. I was going to leave my house in about 10 minutes, and that's when my partner called me, and that's when um, as they say, the shit hit the fan.
Okay. Would you like to share any other personal stories or experiences from that day?
Well, from that day, again, one story. I mean, once we got mobilized and we were assigned to the World Trade Center, and we were there, for most of the day. I had been up for about 18 hours. 18 hours. We were looking for survivors and everything else, and it was just a really, I don't know, horrific day.
Mm-hmm.
And the bosses basically told all the cops that were there, they were like, okay, listen, everybody go home and take a 4-hour break and then come back. I had gone home, took a shower because my body, the smell of death was everywhere. I figured I'd lie down for a couple hours. When I went to bed, my alarm clock rang, and I thought that I had dreamt everything. I thought that I had a dream about 2 planes going into the World Trade Center, and I had dreamt all the stuff that I had seen that day. But when I looked out the window and I saw all the fire trucks going by, because I live right by a highway, and I showed up that the highway next to my house was all closed down, and all the fire trucks and police cars and everything was going by, I said, wow, I didn't dream this. This thing happened. Mm-hmm. It's sad because there was a lot of guys that I worked with, a few guys that I worked with in 9/11 when we were doing the cleanup, and I would have to say 4 or 5 of those guys are already dead, recently died due to the different types of cancers that they contracted while breathing in all these toxins. Right now, over 100 police officers after 9/11 have died due to breathing in the toxins that was a result of those towers falling, and over 100 firemen have died. You also have emergency service workers like ambulance workers and paramedics, and all these type of people also contracted with many different types of cancers. I had a friend that contracted 5 different types of cancers, and all the doctors said the same thing, without a doubt, 911 related. So that's the only thing that I worry about is I check myself out. I think other cops that were there won't worry about it, but we'll see what happens. One funny story I want to share though.
Okay.
I said I saw the very best of people.
Yeah.
And I saw the very worst of people. Well, when the planes first hit and then the towers fell, and a bunch of other fire trucks came, they had surrounded this white van, white work van. They had surrounded this white work van to try and help everybody out. When the firemen came back, they noticed that their expensive equipment was missing from the fire trucks, which is the jaws of life. That's very expensive equipment. It costs like $4,000 or $5,000. The circular saws, all the power tools from those fire trucks were missing. The firemen thought that the guy who was in that white van stole those tools and shoved them into that white van. So they asked the guy to open up his van. We want to check your van. We're missing tools, and the guy refused. Well, at the time, my sergeant walked up to the guy and said, "Hey, open up the van." So they opened up the van, and sure as heck, the guy had stolen all those tools and placed it in his van. So at that time, we weren't about to arrest anybody because of all the chaos that was happening. So the sergeant grabs the guy by the collar, walks him out of the scene, walks him away from the area, and tells the fireman, I can't lock him up, but I'm going to take him away from the area. Basically gives him a kick in the butt and tells him to get the hell out of the area. He was escorted out of the area. When the sergeant returned back to where that van was at, the van had been cut into little pieces. And all the firemen, all those expensive power tools that the firemen had, it appears that they had cut this man's van into nice little pieces, and all the firemen were laughing, and they said, well, it looks like one of those beams from the towers fell on this guy's van. So they basically said that's the last time this guy steals from firemen.
Yeah.
So everybody was laughing about that.
Do you know how many planes were involved in 9/11?
Well, in 9/11 you had the two planes, obviously, that hit both towers.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you had the plane that hit the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And then you had the other plane that wasn't allowed to fly. That's when the passengers took it over. From what I understand, there was also another plane that never made it off the ground because of mechanical difficulties.
Mm.
So, as everything, it's either pre 9/11 or post 9/11. Right now, everything is post 9/11. Up here in New York City, the police is very paranoid about another terrorist attack.
Mm.
They don't think it's going to come from a plane. They think it's going to come. They think it's going to come from maybe 4 or 5 terrorists with automatic handguns starting to shoot people, which is what happened in Mumbai, India.
Could you actually see the building fall down?
Yeah, I actually the first building had fallen down. The first building had fallen down when I was watching TV. When that happened, I jumped in my car and picked up my partner and drove over the Brooklyn Bridge. As I'm driving over the Brooklyn Bridge, the second building fell down.
Oh, okay.
As that second building fell down, obviously, like I said, you talk about panic. Thousands of people running over the Brooklyn Bridge. It was a sight to see.
Papi, go up. It's dead to the star.
Fine, I'll be back. Yeah, go ahead.
Did it ever occur to you that maybe another plane would crash into another building? Like, did you think more would keep coming?
At that time, no. For some reason, I didn't think any more planes were coming. The reality is that it was all over the radio, and I knew, if we had it, and there were guys going over the radio, you need to call the Air Force, we're being attacked. I knew that we would definitely put up. The Air Force would definitely shoot up there, and the FAA would start grounding all these planes. I didn't think that there would be another attack once these two hit. I mean, the reality is that they served its purpose. They got exactly what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I always thought after the first bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993, I always thought that these guys would come and try to bomb the World Trade Center again. I just didn't think that they would do it with airplanes.
Yeah.
Which I have to admit is pretty ingenious.
So after 9/11, after the attack, after the buildings had fallen down and it was pretty much over, I guess, did people volunteer to help clean up? What was it like just getting back to normal?
Well, there was a ton of volunteers the first couple of weeks. You had steel workers coming down. You had all the steel workers coming down. You had tons of people coming to volunteer. You had volunteer firemen from all over, from Connecticut, from New Jersey, from Pennsylvania, from I saw guys, from far away as Boston, from different locations. I had an old partner who had retired and gone out to Florida. He literally drove 22 hours to come up here to help, and like I said, that was an unbelievable feeling. Guys that I hadn't seen in years that had retired cops, everybody. There was retired firemen who came to volunteer to try and help as much as they possibly can. There was a gathering of people helping each other that I've never seen, and I probably will never see in my lifetime again. I think I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that everybody came together and helped each other out. Wild, just totally wild. You asked me before if I remember something else that stood up in my mind about the World Trade Center. Well, when the World Trade Center had fallen straight down. Well, what most people didn't understand is that underneath the World Trade Center there were 9 floors.
Right.
9 floors of malls, stores, barbershops, all kinds of stuff. Well, when I walked to the center of one of those towers had literally fallen straight down, and they went down 9 floors. Each one of those floors had busted underneath. And as I looked down from on top of the base of the World Trade Center, I could count those 9 levels. It was like if somebody had taken a knife and cut it straight down. Well, everybody knows all the tons of debris that came down, but on one of the levels was a Coach handbag store. A Coach handbag store. Well, the shelves of that handbag store still had the Coach handbags on there. So you had millions of tons of debris come straight down, cut through floors of concrete all the way down, and handbags were still on their shelves, which freaked me out. It freaked all the cops out. With all this stuff that came down, how come the handbags didn't fall off the shelves? And they were still there. It was amazing.
It's crazy.
Sort of like when a tornado hits a location and hits one house and just cuts a house in half, and then right next to it could be something else and it won't touch it.
Mm-hmm.
This was the same concept.
So was the NYPD preparing for more attacks after 9/11? What did y'all do? Were y'all waiting?
I think the NYPD was more worried about other attacks happening. So that's why that whole zone, when the Twin Towers first collapsed, the NYPD literally shut down the southern tip of Manhattan from Canal Street all the way down to Battery Park. Now, that's a huge area to cut off, but they cut that whole area off. They stationed, no one was allowed in except emergency personnel. As time went on, because there were thousands of people living in that area who were complaining, listen, we got to get back to our houses. Then the NYPD started escorting these people to their homes so they can go there and take their belongings and go somewhere else. And they started closing the circle. They're making the circle smaller around the World Trade Center. So, were they worried about other attacks? Absolutely. I don't know if they were worried so much about plane attacks, but at that time the mayor wanted to get Wall Street back up and running again. I think Wall Street was closed for 3 days, and they wanted Wall Street to get back up,
Mm-hmm. So that's all the questions that I have. So if you want to add on anything, you can, but
that's basically it.
Yeah.
I didn't get into the real gory stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's probably good. Well, thank you.
All right, sweetie. Anything else? How's school?
It's good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You can shut the recorder now to talk to me.
Okay.